The city of Targus was loud, glowing with alien lights and filled with strange voices. Every street was alive with trade, laughter, and bargaining in languages no human could fully understand. The air smelled of burning oil, sweet fruit, and smoke from metal fires. Among this chaos walked a single human man. His name was Daniel. His clothes were torn, his boots thin, and his face tired. To the alien crowd, he was nothing, just a poor outsider from a weaker world. Daniel moved between stalls, searching for scraps of food he might afford. He carried only a few credits, not enough to buy a proper meal. The vendors ignored him or turned their backs when they saw his human face. He felt small here, surrounded by giants with armored skin, shining eyes, and voices that shook the ground. He thought to himself that perhaps today would be another day of hunger. But then, something strange happened. The noise of the marketplace began to fade. The shouts of traders grew softer. The laughter died away. Daniel stopped, confused, as the crowd slowly fell silent. He turned his head and saw that every alien eye was looking in the same direction. The people stepped aside, moving quickly, clearing the path. Some lowered their heads, others whispered, and some simply ran. Out of the shadowed gate came a figure taller than all the rest. She was enormous, almost twice the height of a human. Her body was covered in dark silver armor that glowed faintly under the sun. A long black cloak hung from her shoulders, and in her hand she carried a staff carved with strange symbols that shimmered like fire. Her face was sharp and proud, with eyes glowing a deep violet. It was the widow. Everyone in Targus knew her. She was feared, respected, and avoided. Her husband, the great warrior lord of her people, had died a season ago. Since then, she walked the markets alone, silent and strong, searching for something. Some said she was cursed. Some whispered she was dangerous. Others said she was hunting for a new mate, but none dared step forward. For her gaze was enough to break even the strongest dot, and now her gaze fell on Daniel. He froze. His heart raced as he realized she was looking directly at him. Around him, the crowd stepped even further back. Aliens stared at him with wide eyes, some whispering, "The human? Why him?" Others shook their heads, certain he would not live to see tomorrow. The widow's heavy steps echoed on the stone road as she walked straight toward him. Every step made Daniel feel smaller, weaker. He wanted to run, but his legs refused to move. His breath caught in his throat. He had faced hunger, pain, and loneliness before, but never had he felt fear like this. She stopped only a few feet away from him. Daniel had to tilt his head back just to see her face. Her violet eyes glowed brighter now, locking onto his. For a long moment, she said nothing. The silence grew heavier. The marketplace was so quiet Daniel could hear the sound of his own heartbeat. Then, her lips parted and her deep voice rolled out like thunder. "You," she said. "You will do." Daniel's mouth went dry. He had no idea what she meant. Around them, the crowd gasped. Some aliens muttered in disbelief. Others began to laugh in nervous fear. "For what?" Daniel whispered, barely able to speak. The widow leaned closer. Her shadow covered him completely. Her voice lowered, but it carried a strange weight, as if her words were binding. "You will stand beside me. You will take the place no other dares to take. From this day, you are mine." Daniel's stomach twisted. He wanted to shout that she was wrong, that he was just a poor human with nothing to offer. But the way she looked at him made him swallow his words. There was no doubt in her eyes. She had chosen him. The silence broke when the crowd began to murmur louder. Some shouted, "Impossible." Others hissed in anger. A few laughed, calling it madness. But no one dared step forward. None dared challenge the widow's choice. Daniel felt the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing down on him. His body trembled. He had no idea what was happening or why she had picked him, but he understood one thing clearly. His life had just changed forever. The widow turned her head, raising her staff high into the air. The symbols along its length flared with light. The crowd bowed low, their fear stronger than their disbelief. She lowered the staff again and faced Daniel once more. Her final words, before turning away, froze his blood. "Follow me, human. Your fate begins now." And with that, she walked away, leaving him standing in the center of the silent marketplace, his heart pounding, his mind racing, and his future sealed in mystery. Daniel followed her through the winding streets, his legs weak but moving. He did not dare stop. The crowd kept their distance, watching from shadows as the tall alien widow led him forward. Her cloak dragged across the stone path, and her staff tapped against the ground with every step. Daniel felt like a prisoner being taken to his judgment, though no chains bound his wrists at last. She stopped in front of a towering gate carved from black stone. Strange symbols glowed across its surface, moving like fireflies trapped in rock. 2 armored guards stood there. When they saw her, they bowed deeply and opened the gate without a word. Daniel's heart sank. He was being led inside her fortress. The widow did not speak until they passed through long halls lit by pale blue fire. Alien banners hung from the ceiling, marked with the crest of a blade crossed with a star. At last, she entered a chamber so vast it could hold 100 humans. The walls were lined with old weapons, shields, and armor, each piece carrying scars of war. At the far end of the room, she stopped and turned to him. Her glowing violet eyes pinned him in place. For the first time, she removed her helm, setting it aside on a stone table. Her long black hair fell down her back, streaked with silver. Her face was beautiful but harsh, like carved stone, full of strength and loss. "Human," she said slowly, her voice echoing in the great chamber. "Do you know who I am?" Daniel swallowed hard. "The people. They called you widow." Her eyes narrowed. "Widow is what they whisper. My true name is Soraka. I was wife to Korvac, warlord of the Targon clans. He is dead, and with his death, my enemies grow bold." Daniel tried to keep his voice steady. "Why? Why me? I am nothing. I am poor. I am weak compared to your kind." Soraka stepped closer, towering over him. Yet there was no cruelty in her eyes only, something heavier. "Because weakness is what they will not expect. They fight to claim me, to claim my land, to claim my people. Every suitor comes with armies at his back, hungry for power. But you have nothing. That is why you are safe. That is why you are dangerous." Daniel frowned, not understanding. Safe, dangerous. "I don't." She cut him off with a raised hand. "Listen. According to our law, I must take a husband before the next moon cycle ends. If I fail, my clan will lose its lands, its warriors, its voice among the stars. The council waits like vultures, ready to tear apart what my husband built. I will not allow that." Daniel's chest tightened. He realized now she had not chosen him out of kindness. She had chosen him because she needed a shield. Her voice lowered, softer but heavier. "If I marry one of them, I will become their property. They will strip my clan, enslave my people, and erase Korvac's name. But if I marry you, a human with no claim, no army, no power, then everything remains mine. You are nothing, Daniel, and that is your strength." The words cut deep. He felt both insulted and strangely honored. She was telling him that his poverty, his insignificance, was the one thing that could save her world. Daniel shook his head. "But I don't know your laws. I don't know your ways. I'll only embarrass you. A faint smile touched her lips, though it was cold. Do you think I care about pride? No, I care about survival. You will stand beside me. You will be my husband before the council, and they will not dare to challenge me because the law will bind them. Daniel felt his knees weaken. A human husband to an alien warlord's widow. It sounded insane. But there was something in her eyes that silenced his protest. Beneath her strength, beneath her armor, he saw pain. He saw loneliness. You don't want this, Daniel said quietly. Not truly. For the first time, her voice cracked, just slightly. No, she admitted. I want my husband alive. I want the war not to have taken him. But wanting changes nothing. Need does. And right now, Daniel, I need you. The room grew colder. Daniel's heart pounded as he realized he had no choice. If he refused, she could end him with one strike of her staff. If he agreed, his life would never again belong to him. Soraka turned away, looking at the great banners on the wall. Tomorrow, the council will test you. They will not let this pass without challenge. You will face trials. You will be mocked, threatened, perhaps even hunted. But if you survive, you will not only be my husband. You will be protector of a clan that spans 10 worlds. She looked back at him with eyes that burned like fire. Do you understand now why I chose you, human? Daniel wanted to scream that he didn't. That he was no warrior, no hero, no savior. But the words stuck in his throat. He could only nod slowly, fear twisting inside him. Soraka stepped close again, so near he could feel the heat of her armor. Then rest tonight, Daniel. Tomorrow, your trials begin. And with that, she turned away, leaving him alone in the vast hall. His heart heavy with dread, his mind spinning with fear. And one question burning above all others: what secret danger waited in the trials of the alien widow? Daniel lay awake that night on the stone bed they had given him. The room was quiet, but he could not rest. His mind raced with questions he could not answer. Why had she really chosen him? Could a human like him truly survive alien trials? And what would happen if he failed? The walls around him glowed faintly with alien symbols, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. Every sound outside, distant footsteps, clanging armor, or the low growl of beasts kept him tense. He thought about running. Maybe if he slipped out of the fortress, he could vanish into the alleys of Targus and disappear. But deep inside, he knew the truth. She would find him. The widow was not the kind of being a man could run from. At dawn, heavy doors opened and Soraka entered. She no longer wore her helmet, but her armor still gleamed in the firelight. Her violet eyes were sharp, fixed on him as though reading his thoughts. You did not sleep, she said. It was not a question. Daniel shook his head. How could I? Tomorrow, you throw me to your council, to their trials. I don't even know what I'm facing. She stepped closer. Her voice was steady, almost calm. That is why you must listen. The trials are not just tests of strength, they are tests of spirit. My enemies want you to break. If you bend, if you run, they will call you unworthy, and the law will let them take everything. But if you stand, even broken, they cannot touch me. Do you see? Daniel clenched his fists. So you want me to be your shield, a human sacrifice. Her lips curved into something between a smirk and a frown. Not a sacrifice, a partner. For as long as you live, you will share my name, my house, my power. Do you think that means nothing? Daniel looked down at his worn boots, ashamed of the holes in them, ashamed of his weakness. What if I refuse? He asked softly. The room grew colder. Soraka's shadow stretched across him as she leaned forward. Refuse, and you will not leave this fortress alive. Do you understand? His chest tightened. She was not threatening him for cruelty, she was simply stating fact. To her, it was as natural as saying the sky was blue. Daniel raised his eyes to hers. Then what do I gain if I say yes? You speak of power, but power means nothing to a man with an empty stomach. Sirika straightened, her cloak falling behind her like the wings of a dark bird. You gain everything you lack: food, wealth, protection. No one will spit on you for being human. You will not sleep on stone streets again. You will be husband to the widow of Korvac, and all who mock you will bow in fear. The words struck him hard. For a moment, he imagined it walking through the markets not as a beggar but as her chosen mate, guarded, respected, untouchable. The thought burned inside him like forbidden fire. But another thought followed, heavier. And what of you? He asked. You speak as if this is only for your clan. I guess. Is that truly all you want, Siraka? A shield against your rivals? Or is there more you are not telling me? For the first time, she hesitated. The silence stretched between them. Then, slowly, she lowered her staff and looked away. Once, I was not only a widow. Once, I was a wife. I was loved. I was not meant to be alone. But the war took him. Now the law takes me. I do not seek love, Daniel. I seek survival. If love comes after, perhaps that is fate. But survival must come first. Her voice cracked at the last word. It was quick, sharp, but Daniel caught it. Behind the steel of her voice, he saw a wound that had never healed. He stepped closer, surprising even himself. Then I'll ask one thing before I agree. If I stand beside you, you must promise me one thing in return. Her eyes turned back to him, glowing with curiosity. And what is that, human? Daniel took a slow breath. Don't treat me like a tool. Don't treat me like a shield you throw away when it breaks. If I'm to be your husband, even in name only, then I want to be treated as a man, not a pawn. For a moment, she simply stared at him. Then, to his shock, she laughed. It was not cruel. It was low, rich, and strange, like thunder rolling far away. You are bold, she said. Perhaps too bold for your own good. But you speak truth. Very well, Daniel. I give you my word. You will not be my pawn. You will be my partner. She raised her staff, and its glowing runes lit the chamber. So, it is settled. Before the council, you will stand as my chosen. But remember this, partners or not, the trials will kill you if you falter. Survive them, and you live. Fail, and you die. That is the bargain. Daniel's throat went dry, but he forced himself to nod. His fear had not left him, but something else stirred now, to something almost like fire in his chest. The bargain was made. The widow had her human. The human had his chance. And beyond the fortress walls, the council was already sharpening their knives. The next morning, the sky above Targus was gray and heavy with clouds. Drums echoed through the city, deep and slow, calling every citizen to the grand arena. Daniel stood at the edge of the widow's fortress, his heart pounding as he looked at the path ahead. He wore new clothes, simple but strong, given by Siraka's people. Still, he felt exposed, as if every alien eye would soon pierce through his skin. Siraka stood beside him, tall and fierce in her armor, her staff glowing with violet light. She looked down at him, her expression unreadable. The council will be waiting. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not kneel, no matter what they demand. Stand tall, Daniel. Even in fear, stand tall. He nodded, though his legs already felt like shaking wood. Together, they walked toward the arena gates. Inside, the place roared with voices. Thousands of aliens filled the seats, their cheers and laughter rolling like thunder. At the center of the vast stone floor stood the council 10 elders, each Wrapped in dark robes, their faces shadowed beneath heavy crowns. The tallest elder raised a clawed hand, and the arena fell silent. His voice was like dry gravel scraping against stone. "Widow Soraka, you bring us a husband, a human." The words spat from his mouth like poison. "Do you insult this council? Do you mock our laws?" Soraka's staff struck the ground, sending a ripple of light across the stone. "I obey the law. The law demands I take a husband before the cycle ends. I have chosen. The law does not forbid my choice." Murmurs spread through the arena. Some laughed openly, others hissed. The elder's eyes turned to Daniel. "Then let the human prove himself. Let him face the trials. If he survives, he is your husband. If he fails," he smiled thinly, "then you will be free to choose again." The crowd cheered, eager for blood. Daniel's throat felt dry, but Soraka's hand touched his shoulder. She leaned close and whispered, "Remember the bargain. Stand tall." The first trial began. Gates at the far end of the arena opened with a grinding roar. From the shadows emerged a beast unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. Its body was like a lion, but covered in black scales. Its head carried two horns that crackled with sparks of blue fire. Its eyes locked on him, glowing with hunger. Daniel stumbled back as the beast roared, shaking the ground. The crowd cheered louder. Weapons? He had none. Only his bare hands. The beast charged. Daniel ran, his heart hammering in his chest. The arena was wide, but not wide enough. He ducked behind a broken pillar, just as the creature slammed into it, shattering stone. Dust filled the air. Daniel coughed, his body trembling. He thought he was finished until he saw the creature's horn lodged in the broken stone. It thrashed, trying to pull free. Instinct took over. Daniel grabbed a loose piece of rock and smashed it against the beast's exposed eye. It roared in pain, pulling itself free, blood spilling from its face. Daniel scrambled back, his chest burning. The beast turned toward him again, angrier than before. It lunged. Daniel rolled to the side, barely avoiding the deadly horns. His body ached, but he forced himself up. The crowd had fallen silent. They expected him to die quickly, but he still stood. At last, the beast stumbled, blinded in one eye, bleeding heavily. Daniel did not kill it. Instead, he backed away, letting the creature collapse in exhaustion. The elder rose, frowning. He lives through the beast, but strength is not enough. The second trial. 2 warriors entered the arena, each armed with curved blades. They circled Daniel like predators. He had no weapon. Fear filled his veins, but Soraka's voice echoed in his mind. "Stand tall." The first warrior slashed, and Daniel dodged clumsily, the blade grazing his arm. Pain burned, but he stayed on his feet. The second attacked, and Daniel ducked, grabbing a handful of sand. With desperate force, he threw it into the alien's eyes. The warrior roared, blinded. Daniel lunged, seizing the dropped blade. He swung wildly, forcing both warriors back. His movements were rough, untrained, but his desperation made him dangerous. When one charged again, Daniel struck with all his weight, knocking the warrior to the ground. The second, still half blind, stumbled back. The arena thundered with shock. A human surviving against their kind. The elder raised his hand once more. Enough, the third trial awaits. The floor beneath Daniel trembled. A section of the arena opened, revealing a pit glowing with red light. From it rose a platform, a stone disc suspended over fire by chains. On it stood a single figure cloaked in black. When the figure removed its hood, Daniel's stomach dropped. It was not a beast. It was not a warrior. It was a child no older than 10 in human years, with pale skin and glowing eyes. The elder's voice rang out. The last trial is the trial of mercy. Kill the weak or be cast into the flames. Show your heart, human, and we will see if you are worthy." The crowd chanted, demanding blood. Daniel's hands shook as he looked at the frightened child standing before him. The boy's eyes were wide, his body trembling. Daniel's chest tightened. He knew what the council wanted. They wanted to break him, to prove that humans were cruel or cowardly. But as Daniel stared at the boy, he felt something shift inside. His own memories of hunger, of being powerless, came rushing back. He lowered the blade in his hand. "No," he said, his voice firm. "I will not kill a child." The arena exploded with shouts. Some screamed in fury, others in laughter. The elder's face twisted in rage. "Then you choose death." Before the chains could be cut, Soraka's staff slammed into the ground, sending a violet wave across the arena. She raised her voice, powerful and unyielding. "He passed. By our law, he passed. For no warrior who kills without cause deserves to stand beside me. He showed strength, he showed cunning, and now he shows heart. He is mine." The crowd roared in chaos, but none dared challenge her. Daniel dropped the blade, his body shaking, sweat pouring down his face. He had survived. But deep inside, he knew the trials were only the beginning, and in the council's furious eyes, he saw something darker. This was not over. Not even close. The arena still echoed in Daniel's ears long after the trials ended. He remembered the roar of the beast, the clash of blades, and the small child's frightened eyes. Every breath he took still carried the weight of what he had done, what he had refused to do. His body ached, his arm was cut, and his hands trembled from exhaustion. But somehow, he had survived. That night, Soraka brought him back to her fortress. He expected silence, but instead, she ordered the healers to tend to his wounds. Strange glowing salves covered his cuts, cooling the pain, while alien cloth was wrapped around his arms and chest. Daniel lay on the stone bed, staring at the ceiling, still unsure if what happened had been real. Soraka entered the chamber after the healers left. Her staff leaned against the wall, and her armor was gone. For the first time, Daniel saw her in simpler robes, her long black hair falling loosely around her shoulders. Without her armor, she seemed less like an untouchable warlord and more like a woman carrying a burden too heavy to bear. "You should not have lived," she said. Her voice low but steady. Daniel gave a weak laugh. "Thanks for the encouragement." Her eyes narrowed, though not in anger. "Do not mistake me. You survived where others would have failed. The beast should have torn you apart. The warriors should have cut you down. And yet you stood. Even when they placed the child before you, you stood." Daniel sat up slowly, wincing at the pain in his side. "I didn't stand. I almost fell. I was terrified the whole time." Soraka stepped closer, her shadow stretching over him. "Fear does not make you weak. It makes you honest. Those who claim they feel no fear are liars, or they are already dead inside." For the first time since meeting her, Daniel caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Respect, silence filled the room for a moment before Daniel spoke again. "Why the child? Why would your council do that? To test mercy?" Her face hardened. "No, to break you. They wanted you to kill innocents so they could brand you a monster. If you had done it, they would have laughed and said, 'See? Even humans are beasts.' But you refused. That is why you live. That is why they fear you now." Daniel shook his head. "I didn't refuse for them. I refused because I couldn't. I've been hungry, alone, beaten down. I know what it's like to be weak. I couldn't take it out on someone smaller than me." Her eyes softened slightly. She lowered herself to sit across from him, her tall form folding gracefully. "Korvac, my husband, once told me something. He said strength is not in how many enemies you kill, but in how many you choose not to. I see now that you carry the same truth. The mention of her husband's name made Daniel pause. He saw a shadow cross her face, a sadness hidden beneath all her strength. For a moment, she did not look like the widow feared by thousands. She looked like a woman who had lost everything. "Do you miss him?" Daniel asked carefully. Soraka's gaze drifted toward the fire burning in the corner of the room. Her voice lowered. "Every day. He was my anchor in war, my fire in cold nights. With him gone, I am half of what I was. The council smells weakness in me. That is why I needed you." Daniel's chest tightened. For the first time, he understood she was not just using him as a tool. She was clinging to something, anything, to keep from drowning in her grief. "I'm not Korvac," Daniel said quietly. Her eyes met his, fierce and burning. "No, you are Daniel." And today, that was enough. The words surprised him. He had expected to feel small beside her, unworthy. But hearing her say his name with such weight gave him a strange strength. For a long while, they sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. The tension that had once been sharp and cold now felt different, warmer, softer, though still unspoken. Finally, Soraka rose. "Rest. Tomorrow, whispers will spread. My enemies will not stay silent after today. They will scheme. They will plot. And they will come for you first. But you will not face them alone." Daniel looked up at her. "Why not?" Her lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. "Because you are my husband now. And a husband of Soraka does not walk alone." She left the room, her cloak brushing against the floor. Daniel lay back, staring at the ceiling again, but this time his thoughts were not only of fear. They were of her, the widow, the warlord's wife, the woman who carried pain in silence. Something was changing. Between them, inside him, he could feel it, and outside the fortress walls. Enemies already gathered in the shadows, sharpening their blades, waiting for their chance to strike. The days after the trials were heavy with whispers. Daniel could feel them wherever he went, ties watching from the corners, voices hissing in the shadows. In the marketplace, some laughed at him, calling him the pet husband. Others stared with cold silence, their contempt sharper than any blade. But among Soraka's people, a strange unease had grown. They did not know whether to fear him, mock him, or bow in respect. Inside the fortress, things were different. Soraka kept him close, guiding him through her world. She showed him the training halls, the banners of her clan, and the great chamber where Korvac's sword hung untouched. They spoke more now, sometimes about her late husband, sometimes about Earth, and sometimes in silence that carried more weight than words. Slowly, Daniel began to feel less like a pawn and more like something else, though he could not name it yet. But beyond the walls, the council burned with anger. They had hoped the trials would destroy him, but instead he had survived. Worse, he had won the crowd's curiosity. That made him dangerous. One evening, as the sun bled red across the alien sky, Soraka was called to a secret meeting with the council. Daniel was not allowed to follow. She left with only 2 guards, her expression calm but her shoulders tight with unspoken tension. Hours passed. Daniel paced the halls, his stomach twisted in knots. Something felt wrong. The fortress was too quiet. The guards at the doors avoided his eyes. Finally, he decided he could not sit idle. He slipped through the halls, moving toward the council chamber. He stopped before reaching the grand doors. Voices echoed inside low, sharp, filled with venom. "You dishonor your people, Soraka," one elder snarled. "You bring a human to stand where only warriors should stand," another hissed. "Release him. Cast him aside, and we will forgive your shame." Daniel pressed himself against the wall, his heart hammering. He could barely breathe as Soraka's voice rose, steady and cold. "You forget the law. I chose. He passed the trials. He is mine by right." The elder's laughter shook the chamber. "You think the law protects you? The law is ours to shape. And soon, neither you nor your human will live to test it." Daniel's blood ran cold. He stumbled back from the doors, panic rising in his chest. They were planning something final. He turned down the hall, only to find two figures waiting for him. Warriors, their blades gleamed in the torchlight. Going somewhere? Human. One sneered. Daniel froze. His mind raced for escape, but the hall was narrow. The first warrior lunged. Daniel dodged clumsily, the blade slicing across his sleeve. He ran, boots slamming against the stone, his breath ragged. The warriors shouted behind him, their steps growing louder. He darted into a side passage, through a half-open door, and into the armory. Weapons lined the wall, strange spears, axes, and swords too heavy for human hands. He grabbed the smallest blade he could find, his hands shaking. The warriors entered, grinning like hunters cornering prey. "You survived the trials," one said, raising his sword. "But no one survives the council's will." Daniel raised his blade, though his arms trembled. "Then they'll have to kill me themselves," he spat. The first warrior attacked, their blades clashing. The force nearly knocked the weapon from Daniel's grip. Pain shot through his arms, but desperation kept him moving. He ducked, rolled, swung wildly. The second warrior caught his side with a shallow cut. He cried out, stumbling back. Then the doors burst open. Soraka stormed in, her staff blazing with violet fire. With a single strike, she sent the first warrior flying across the room, crashing into the wall. The second tried to swing at her, but she caught the blade in her bare hand, snapped it like wood, and hurled the warrior to the ground. Her eyes burned with fury. "Traitors," she growled. "The council poisons my house." The warriors gasped for mercy, but she silenced them with a wave of her staff. They collapsed, unconscious, smoke rising from their armor. Daniel dropped his weapon, his chest heaving. Blood dripped from his side. He looked at her, fear and relief battling inside him. "They were going to kill me," he said, his voice shaking. Soraka's face darkened, shadows crossing her sharp features. "No, they were going to use you. Kill you quietly, blame it on enemies, and strip me of all rights. This is the council's hand. The betrayal is here." Daniel's stomach turned. "Then we can stay here." "They'll never stop." Her jaw tightened, and for a moment her strength seemed to crack. "No, they will not. They will strike again, and harder. But hear me, Daniel. I will not let them take you. They think you are weak. They think you are nothing. But they are blind. I see what they cannot." Her hand touched his shoulder, firm and warm. "You are more than they know, and they will learn it one way or another." Daniel swallowed hard, his body trembling, but deep inside, something else grew. Not just fear. Not just survival. Trust. The betrayal had been revealed. The council wanted him dead. And yet, with Soraka beside him, Daniel felt a fire he had never known before. But in the shadows of the fortress, spies already carried word of the failed attack. The council would not forgive. They would not forget, and their next strike would not come with warning. The fortress was no longer safe. Daniel could feel it in every shadow, every whisper that echoed in the halls. The council's betrayal was no longer a secret. They had tried to end him once, and they would try again. Soraka's guards doubled, but even Daniel knew it would not hold forever. Their enemies were patient. They were many. On the third night after the attack, a message came from the council. It was not a request. It was a summons. Daniel was to appear before them at dawn in the Hall of Stars, where judgment would be passed. Sarika read the message aloud, her violet eyes burning like fire. "They are forcing the final move," she said. "They think they can corner us. They believe you will bend. But you must not. Tomorrow decides everything." Daniel's heart hammered. He remembered the beast, the warriors, the child in the trial. Each time he had survived by instinct, by luck, by courage he never knew he had. But this was different. He was no longer fighting beasts or blades. He was facing power itself. "What if I fail?" Daniel whispered. Sarika turned to him, fierce and unshaken. "Then I fall with you. But hear me, Daniel, if you stand tall tomorrow, if you speak with the fire I know you carry, then no council, no law, no army will break us." Her words wrapped around him like armor. For the first time since arriving in her world, Daniel felt something new. Not just fear, not just survival. Purpose. The dawn came. The Hall of Stars was vast, its ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. Light from 1,000 glowing crystals poured down on the circle where the council waited. 10 elders sat on thrones of black stone, their faces sharp, their crowns heavy with power. The arena trials had been for the people. This was for the rulers. Daniel walked beside Sarika, every step echoing like thunder in his chest. His hands shook, but he hid them at his sides. He forced himself to look forward, not at the crowd of nobles watching from the shadows. Sarika's presence was like a wall beside him, strong and unyielding. The head elder rose. His voice cracked across the hall like a whip. "Human, you were dragged from the dirt of the markets. You were nothing. And yet here you stand, pretending to be husband to a warlord's widow. Do you think yourself worthy of this seat? Do you think yourself equal to us?" The council laughed, cruel and sharp. The sound dug into Daniel's chest. His legs wanted to buckle. But then he remembered Sarika's words. "Stand tall." He took a step forward. His voice shook at first, but it grew stronger with every word. "I was nothing," Daniel said. "I came here with nothing. No army, no power, not even food to eat. I was weak, yes. I was forgotten. But I survived. I stood against your beast. I stood against your warriors. And I refused to kill the innocent child you placed before me. You wanted me to break, but I did not. Do you know why?" The council's laughter faded. The hall grew silent. Daniel's voice rose, carrying across the chamber. "Because strength is not how many you can kill. Strength is how many you protect. Strength is standing when every voice tells you to kneel. I am human. That is my weakness, and it is my strength. And today, I stand not for myself, but for her, for Sarika, for her clan. For every soul who refuses to be owned by your greed." The hall shook with murmurs. Some nobles gasped. Others whispered in awe. Even the elders shifted in their seats. The head elder's eyes narrowed. His voice dripped with venom. "You defy us, human. You dare lecture the council." Sarika's staff slammed into the stone floor, violet fire spilling outward. She stepped forward, her voice like a blade cutting through the air. "He does not defy the law. He embodies it. You demanded trials. He survived. You demanded mercy. He showed it. You demanded strength. He proved it. By the law of our people, he is my husband. And by the will of my heart, he is my choice." Her words rang like thunder. The crowd of nobles stirred, their whispers swelling. The council could feel it, the tide shifting, power slipping from their grasp. The head elder snarled, but he saw the truth in the faces around him. If they struck now, it would not only be Sarika who rose against them. It would be the people at last. He hissed through his teeth. So be it. The human stands. But remember this, Daniel of Earth, the stars are wide and shadows are long. Today, you win. Tomorrow, we may take more than victory from you. The elders vanished into the shadows, leaving the hall buzzing with voices. Soraka turned to Daniel, her eyes glowing with pride. You stood tall, she said softly, and they will never forget it. Daniel's knees nearly gave out, but Soraka caught him with her strong hand. He looked up at her, breathless, his heart racing. Did we win? She nodded slowly. For now, but this is only the beginning. You are no longer just a man. You are husband to Soraka, protector of my clan, and a name the council will fear. For the first time, Daniel felt it not just survival, not just chance, but belonging. He had found something greater than himself. And as he stood beside her, in the Hall of Stars, he knew one truth burned brighter than all others. The giant alien widow had needed a husband. But perhaps, in the end, he had needed her just as much.